What a first half it's been for 2024 as far as movies go. We had blockbusters that failed to ignite at the box office. Maybe they'll find a new life on streaming. Hard to tell. Studios are being so goddamn weird that if something doesn't make a boatload of goddamn cash in the first couple weeks, they're like, shit, we're panicking. We have to pull it out before anybody decides that our movie is really, really good and shove it out on a streaming service for 20 goddamn bucks. We're being really goddamn smart. But then you have movies that drop on streaming services and you wonder how they didn't get a theatrical release. And then you have some that dropped in theaters and wondered, how the hell did this get a theatrical release? Better yet, as for what's on this particular list, I wondered how they got any release at all. So yes, there's the good, there's the okay, and now here's the really, really, really bad. I'm John Rentham with my 10 worst movies of 2024 list so far. With some honorable mentions, of course. So, all of these movies have been reviewed in full on the Real Honest Movie Reviews playlist. And much like the best list, I may go a little deep on the honorable mentions. And I will say this. Now, the A grades were far, 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 far lower than the F grades. Yeah, 141 movies that have been released this year that I have reviewed. I am going to try to actually hit 300 because I stopped at 276 last year. But I'm devoting more time to movies, and I want to see just how much good stuff there is, or how much bad stuff there is. And looking ahead, the rest of 2024 might actually have some good stuff. It's also going to have Terrifier 3, and if you are in Smile 2 is going to be interesting. That's going to be fun. And A24 and Neon Studios are releasing more movies, so that's good. Now let's get to the bad shit. So, we start off with Garfield the movie. I kept wanting to call it the Garfield movie. Chris Pratt voicing Garfield, Garfield's origin story. It was dog shit. Ironic, considering that Odie's not the main character. Thank God they didn't do Odie the movie. This was terrible. I did not understand how this got... I mean, yes, obviously, it made some money. I mean, not compared to Inside Out 2, which was smashing. You can check out my best list, by the way, to find out what I thought of Inside Out 2. Or maybe not. You'll have to find out if it's on there. But Garfield the movie is really, really bad. Not funny at all. And the animation looked like it was from about 20 goddamn years ago. Destroy All Neighbors. I mentioned this on one of my horror lists. I bet you can guess which one. Kind of spoiling it right here. Jonah from MST3K gets basically in too deep, and he's trying to keep all the blood in his head instead of destroying all his neighbors. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking here, but they should have thought it through and then punted that goddamn thought out the goddamn window and maybe done something goddamn better. God damn it. It's on Shudder. Lift. As bad as this was with Kevin Hart and various other people, a pretty talented cast. And the fact that this heist movie is not on my worst list, even though this is only a top 10, I'll probably extend it to a top 20 by the end of the year. That's saying something because this movie should have been on there because Lift is terrible. The only reason it's on the honorable mentions list is because so many other bad things have come along. And this is not humorous, not, action-filled in a good way. It is just filled with nonsense and bullshit. Speaking of nonsense and bullshit, Land of Bad. One of the Regal mystery movies that I watched, Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe is trying to steal the show in every goddamn movie he's in. Unfortunately, it's petty theft because Land of Bad... generic 70s, 80s action movie with not a lot of material, not a lot of good acting, definitely not a lot of good action. It's pretty much Land of Bad. It's basically just bad. At least it's smart with what it says on the tin. It's properly accurate. Speaking of accurate, stunk. The spider comes from, I don't know, the great beyond, space. I don't care, space, the final front. It would have been funnier, actually, if a spider had jumped on him like a face hugger. Yeah, terrible. Terrible throwback to, monster movies of the 50s and 60s and 70s. I don't know what they were thinking, but they should have thought more. And then they probably should have maybe just said, you know what? Let's just take the germ of the idea that works, and then let's make the movie good. They failed to do that. They should have put this entire movie in a trash compactor. If you've seen the movie, you know how accurate that is. So, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Okay, look, Afterlife wasn't great, but at least McKenna Grace was allowed to do stuff. She wasn't even allowed to do anything in this. And Finn Wolfhard, I don't know what the fuck his character was supposed to be. I hated this. I absolutely hated this. I was just ripping on this goddamn thing from the very beginning of my review. I couldn't help it. These hacked out legacy sequels are just not good. And the fact that this in particular, with how much I hate this is not in the top 10, is saying something about the quality of films this year. So, hey, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, they should have just left it on ice. Ordinary Angels, hey, let's just take the Aaron Brockovich method and then let's take a Bible or a bullshit holy book, or they're the same thing, and hit you over the head with this inspirational story of a young lady that needed a liver transplant or something. I actually forgot what kind of transplant. I don't give a shit. The girl survived, and that's good. The problem is, the movie is so heavy-handed with all its faith-based stuff that you just really don't care. This is about the only faith-based movie that I've seen, and it's the only one I'm going to goddamn watch, because why would I want to? And even if you take that connotation out of it, the movie isn't good. It's just not. It's just generic and bland. It's like a Hallmark movie with Hilary Swank in it. And a guy that I swear was Matt Damon at a couple points. I mean, it's not, but he kind of looked like Matt Damon a couple times. Look, I'm glad, again, that the lady, or the young girl survived and is now in her 30s or something like that. Good for her. Movie shit. Speaking of shit, Madam Web. Madam Web is not in the top 10. That says something about my opinions and also how bad the rest of the year has been. Madam Web is just apocalyptically bad from every standpoint. Dakota Johnson's checked out. If Sydney Sweeney sneezed, she wouldn't be so full. And maybe Sydney Sweeney couldn't save this goddamn movie. Isabella Merced was in this, the one that was in the live-action Dora the Explorer. And yeah, Madam Web, just inept on every level. Not quite top 10, though. Speaking of which, one more in the honorable mentions, Back to Black. Yeah, let's just take Amy Winehouse's story, who was no saint, and then let's just make the dad sympathetic, when the dad was only out to get his own 15 minutes of fame because he realized his daughter was talented. She was going to flame out anyway, but the bottom line is, this movie was so sanitized, bastardized, that I would have wanted Amy Winehouse to rise from the grave and get everybody involved in this. And also, fun fact, the director of this knows all about preying on a young individual and marrying them. Look it up. Look it up, folks. Nowhere Boy. There's your clue. Top 10 now. Mean Girls. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have put Mean Girls in the top 10 after just ranting about all that, but this is almost egregiously offensive with how just bad the musical numbers are. And yes, they turned Mean Girls into a musical after the smash hit in 2004. So they decided, let's make a musical. I did not know this movie was coming out until, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks before it did. And I was like, oh, it's a musical. That's a choice. I don't mind some musicals. I mean, hell, In the Heights is one of my favorite movies of this decade. Or at least up there. It's really, really good. And there are some good musicals. This just isn't one of them, and also it follows beat for beat the damn story. Some of the characters, while the actors are fine, are super goddamn annoying. To the point, why would you goddamn care? I will say, Tina Fey, though, goddamn, she still looks great. But yeah, this, honoring any of the legacy characters doesn't. The limit does not exist. The limit of bad shit in this movie does not exist. Yeah, it's sadly only number 10. We're in for a long haul here. Summer Camps, number 9. Diane Keaton, Kathy Bates, and various others in this comedy where I do not understand what they were going for. It was from the woman that did the After Everything, After We Fall, or whatever the other one is. Goddamn, I don't remember. I haven't watched those yet. It's been requested I do, and I would rather save what little sanity I have, which I'll lose by the end of this list. But Summer Camp is very, very bad. I mean, I pretty much just shredded it right from the beginning. I didn't expect much, but I was like, okay, Diane Keaton, Kathy Bates, sign me up. I mean, there are other actors in this, too, that I have enjoyed, but Jesus, goddamn great, you have to be kidding me here. Unfunny and just bland and boring, and any good messages are just stamped out and shaved off and nothing sharp. It's all just dull and dim-witted. Speaking of dull and dim-witted, Argyle, number 8. Bryce Dallas Howard Henry Cavill, John Cena, you could shockingly see him, Bryan Cranston, and various others in it. Samuel L. Jackson. We all know what the L stands for. That's motherfucker. And a cat that is CGI most of the time. And I just do not understand. It's from the guy that did the Kingsman movies. I do not understand what this is supposed to be. This is like, I think Apple spent like $200-something million on it. I would like to know where that went. Did it go to the CGI? You need better CGI artists then. Unfunny, overbloated, not good. The action scenes are just terrible. There's like this one that's near the end. It's in like a like where there's skating involved. You don't know what the hell I'm talking about. It's just so bad. And Bryce Dallas Howard, I'm not saying she's the greatest actress ever, but she's better than this. And the other people in this are better than this. And it tried for mind-bendy, twisty stuff and everything. And all it just ended up being was just, the twist was obvious. It was obvious where the hell they were going from the very beginning. Hell, it was obvious from the goddamn trailer. Yeah, dog shit. No wonder it failed. Number 7, trigger warning. The most recent entry, as far as like reviews that I've done. And I'll tell you why trigger warning's here. You want me to believe that Jessica Alba can be some kind of action hero and do all this stuff when it looked like it was causing her physical pain to do this. I mean, I'm sure these stunts did hurt. You know what hurt more? Watching trigger warning. Just twists and turns that just basically just, move. Barely moved at all. Anthony Michael Hall is in this. It's a bad action movie, just generic and bland, a Netflix original that had no originality to it. Number 6, speaking of Netflix, Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, was my number 1 movie. Worst movie that is last year. You know why? Because Zack Snyder's a fucking idiot, and I tell him that to his damn face. He's a fucking moron that never had any goddamn talent. I refuse to believe that this is the same guy that directed 300 and Dawn of the Dead. Even Sucker Punch, which I didn't care for, was way better than this. And Rebel Moon Part 1 was bad. I think he wants to do a bunch more of these. You have to be kidding me. Why in the world would anybody want to give him more money? Yes, people will click on it. Me, being a moron, will click on it thinking it's got to get better. It couldn't get any worse. And the sad thing is, this might actually move up the goddamn list. They're doing director's cuts of Part 1 and Part 2. Why? The director's cuts of, any Zack Snyder movie are never good because they're padded out with slow-mo. Guess what Part 1 and Part 2 of this were? Padded out with slow-mo. These cuts. These fucking cuts. I love the main actress in. Sophia Botella or something like that. I always get her last name wrong. She's beautiful. She's great in some roles. Not this. Jaimin Hanzu's in it. There's a talented cast here. And they're wasted. I feel like Lane wasted this goddamn idea that Zack Snyder was ever a good, proper filmmaker. Number 5, tarot. Yes, you have people playing with tarot cards, and then their fortunes are told, or their fates are told, and they end their lives according to the cards, and it's just so... I pretty much went off on this within the first, little bit of my review, and it was so bad. It's so fucking terrible. I know there are people that feel differently. There are people that like this. And I'm not going to knock people if they liked it. I just don't understand how. And I'm talking like fellow movie fans. Because one of my favorite movie YouTubers was kinder to this. She's also got a bigger platform, Amanda the Jedi. And she dissects movies a lot, better than I could ever hope to. Just want to give her a shout like she needs a shout. She's got a way bigger platform. I just really enjoy her stuff. And I found myself understanding, points when it came to her review of Tarot and a few others. But to be perfectly honest, Tarot to me was the antithesis, the exact opposite of what a good movie should be. It was actually kind of shocking just how bad it was. It felt like a Fear Street and, maybe an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. Fear Street book, Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. Human Centipede with just a bunch of, other horror cliches. And, Yeah, the fact is none of the violence clicked. It made a shocking amount of money because it didn't cost all that much to begin with. But the fact that this movie got a theatrical release is actually kind of baffling. More on that here in a bit as far as theatrical releases. First, we're going to streaming. Number 4, Netflix original from Tyler Perry, Mea Culpa. Kelly Rowland was in this. If it was not for the last, number, if it wasn't for the fact that I actually just lost it in the last, 20 minutes when they started doing the twists and turns and the reveals, maybe the last 30, I actually probably would have put this number 1. But I can't, I might even end up, I probably should have even bumped this thing down. Why? Because Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, annoyed me to a spectacular degree. Mea Culpa, by the way, is by no means good, but at least I was entertained for all the wrong reasons by the closing moments. Because it's a preponderance of twists and bullshit and stuff that, yeah, they try to make it like it's something grand, but it's taken so seriously, and yet you can't take the movie seriously because it's so bad. Mea Culpa is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And her name is Mia in a movie called Mea Culpa. Tyler Perry should be banned from Hollywood for this. Because he ain't much of an actor. He damn sure ain't much of a director. My God, Mea Culpa is terrible. But God, those last number of minutes. Jesus, they're hilarious. What isn't hilarious is number 3, Skeletons in the Closet. This was originally going to be my number 1 worst. And is on my worst horror movie list in case you haven't checked that out. Terrence Howard, Cuba Gooding Jr., and some of the worst special effects I've goddamn seen. And terrible, terrible acting from everybody. Terrible story. It was like high school, play sets for some of this stuff. It's actually kind of shocking this movie got made. Was it funded by a loan from a pawn shop? Did they pawn off some piece of fake jewelry? And they only were able to get about $500-600 for it, and everybody just devoted their time? Because these were some terrible effects, terrible story arc. Oh, it was just terrible in general. Skeletons in the Closet is number 3 for a reason. However, number 2, number 1, I'm going a little bit different. I had it between 4 movies. So fuck you, I'm doing it this way. 2A and 2B. And not 2B. And I wish these movies weren't 2B. Latency and Imaginary are tied for 2. I will work on this list, for the end of the year. But I'm putting them both here because Latency really should have been laid out to rest and had words spoken over it. And we have Imaginary from Blumhouse. The very bane of my goddamn existence. Don't understand what the fuck they were thinking there. Just both movies, and I've talked about them at length in the full-length reviews I did. But Latency, people are, girls isolated in an apartment. Sasha Luss, who is not a leading actress at all, she's there, and then she, basically is haunted by this AI that's controlling her, which that's always good to do. Just let something get into your goddamn brain, and I'm shocked the thing didn't die of lack of material. And then you also have Imaginary that has to do with imaginary friend in the form of a bear that is bound, determined to take somebody. And has the stupidest twists and turns and everything, and they're terrible. So yeah, those are 2A and 2B. It's my list. I'll do what the fuck I want. Number 1, The Strangers Chapter 1 and The Watchers. Why? Because The Strangers Chapter 1 was basically just a retread of the first Strangers, which, upon reflection, wasn't even all that good. Stupid goddamn decisions. Updated material here. So here's my question, though. If this is after the first Strangers, and before Strangers Pray at Night, because of what happened in Strangers Pray at Night, why is all the technology so modern? What is this? Who did this? Why did this happen? Why did the girl, wander around without pants while there are people, clearly stalking the cabin? She's a beautiful girl, but come on. Come on, folks. Let's be smarter here. Also, the fact that we're getting 2 more of these is certainly interesting. They were all directed by Rennie Harlan, who I honestly hope got a big paycheck for this, because I don't see him getting a chance to direct anything quality after this. And then it just terrible tie-ins to the first one. And it was just bad in the fact we're getting 2 more of these. Then we go to The Watchers. M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong's daughter, proves that she has all of her dad's bad qualities. This is a terrible story that had no redeeming qualities to it. It had the gorgeous Georgina Campbell in it, the talented Dakota Fanning, Olwen, whatever the hell her name is, the older lady from the Northman, from Tarot. She was in Tarot. And also from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Netflix movie. They ignored all the other sequels and was a legacy sequel, and it was bad. But yeah, The Watchers, basically just 4 people in a goddamn room. They're watched by these things called the Watchers. It's pretty obvious why they're being watched. The movie doesn't deviate from that, and then tries to deviate way too late, only to realize that it basically ran headfirst into a wall like Dale Earnhardt Sr. So on that note, those are my worst lists. Or my worst movies for my worst list. Yeah, I cheated a little bit with 1 and 1A and 2 and 2A, 2B, whatever. I wish these movies weren't 2B because I want to be positive. Maybe the last half of 2024 will be good. God, it can't be much worse. I fucking cursed it. Fuck. Agree, disagree with what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.